Okay. Hello. This is Chanel Dupree, and I am the Kansas City Regional Director for the Department for Children and Families. And today we are so excited. We have Dr. Linda Boss, and along with me, who will be participating in this courageous conversation is Ashley Smith, who is with Care Portal. And so today we're having a courageous conversation, and this is a part of the Kansas Racial Equity Collaborative. And we just want to acknowledge how important it is regarding the learning journey that we're going on. If you recall, we're having lectures, we're having a listserv that's going out, we have a dedicated website. But another part of this is really diving deep to the folks that are doing the work here in Kansas. And so today we're talking about some application, right? How does racial equity work look like in Kansas? And we're so honored to have Dr. Linda Boss again here, who is the president of KVC Kansas. Welcome, Dr. Boss.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And so the way that we're going to launch into this is I'm going to ask you just a few questions, and then Ashley is going to take it over from there. And so, Dr. Boss, can you tell us a little bit about your work at KVC?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm president for KVC Kansas, and I am one of about 450 staff members who work for KVC Kansas. And we support families in the community through prevention, foster care, reunification, adoption, post-permanency support services. So young adults aging out of care, as well as children going home to their parents or reaching permanency through adoption or custodianship. We also have a large outpatient department that supports families both within the foster care system and outside of the foster care system. And we also have a residential facility for youth who require a higher level of care.
Excellent. So there's extensive work that's done in KVC Kansas, so which means that there's more than just Kansas that KVC is serving, that KVC is also in other states as well. Where else is KVC located?
We are also in Missouri, Kentucky, Nebraska, and West Virginia.
Okay, excellent. So I am actually going to kick it to Ashley to take over and to ask some additional questions.
Thanks, Chanel. Hi, Dr. Boss.
Hi.
So can you tell us how KVC is supporting racial equity advancement in child welfare?
Yes, I am really proud of the work that we're doing to support racial equity and advancement. And I recognize that there is a lot more work to do. Sometimes it's hard to be patient, especially when there is so much work to be done. But if I look back 6 months or 12 months, I can see how much progress we're making in this area. And I feel really proud of the fact that we are making this in the forefront of everything that we're doing. We have a lot of initiatives that focus on all aspects of our work. And then we have some that are dedicated to the workforce, so the staff who are working for us, the workplace, so the environment or the culture that we're creating within our organization, and then also the marketplace, which is the clients and the communities that we serve. And so earlier this year, we formed a KVC Kansas specific Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. We've had an organization-wide one previously when we still have that one, but we formed one specifically for KVC Kansas. And we recruited 12 staff members who were really passionate and dedicated to improving the culture at KVC and the work that we're doing. And that group is focused on all three of those areas. One of the things that we have been doing as part of that group, and in addition to, is really seeking feedback from our staff and from our clients about what we're doing right and what we're getting wrong. And so on our satisfaction survey to all clients, we asked specifically about how good of a job or not our agency does in understanding the lived experience and the culture of each family that we serve, so that families have an anonymous way to give us feedback about what we're getting right and getting wrong. We've also sent several surveys to our staff to ask similar questions about their experience around racial equity and other aspects of inclusion, about what we're getting right and what we're getting wrong, as well as asking them to help prioritize our strategic plan. So what are the things that are the most important for you? So for example, one of the things that came back recently on our survey was the importance of education and support to all types of caregivers to understand the needs of children who are there providing care for. And so that's a top priority. And around our recruitment strategies. So we've taken a look at our HR materials, how we're being really transparent about the types of staff members that we're lacking to make our team diverse. And then we're also looking at our communication strategies, both internal and external. When we provide testimony to lawmakers, we're continuing to emphasize, as we have been for many years, the topic of prevention and how important it is to serve families prior to the child welfare system so that services are available equally across each family, and that they're provided in the way that the family needs them at the time the family needs them by somebody that the family trusts, that either comes from a similar background or understands their lived experience. And making sure that everyone understands that if we're putting the right supports in the right areas, we can help advance the work that we want to do in this area. And then we're also doing what might seem like more concrete or simple things. But for example, earlier this year, we changed all the signage on our single stall bathrooms to be gender neutral, which again, is part of that communication. We want it to be very overt to anyone walking through our front door that this is an inclusive culture. And if their experience is anything less, we want and we're giving them permission and encouragement to come forward and talk about that. So it may not matter to somebody who felt very comfortable in the bathroom that they had been using all along, but it makes a great deal to the person who had to go into a quick trip or somewhere in the community to use a restroom because it didn't feel inclusive to them. We have our diversity statement on all of our front doors and our website. There's an anonymous way to report concerns related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, we want, and even on our email signatures, there's now not only our commitment statement, but a way for anyone to give feedback immediately about their experience with our organization. Coupled together, what we're hoping is that it's going to create an environment in which everyone feels safe to be able to come forward and to talk about things that threaten our culture of inclusivity, so that then we can work on the things that are eroding our culture and ultimately be able to serve our families and serve our staff much better.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're actually, making effort to include the voice of those who have personally been impacted through lived experience. Is the work personally important to you? And if so, why?
This work is incredibly important to me. It comes back to the reason why I entered doing child welfare or family well-being service to begin with. It's that we want every family to be at their best, to every family to thrive. And I honestly believe every caregiver, every parent has the potential to be a safe, loving caregiver for their child. But that work, that family well-being work, really starts at looking at what that family needs to thrive. And we know from this work that there are so many systemic barriers that are keeping families from being able to be at their best. And so if we're coming to this work from the place that we should be, and we're getting up with the passion and the drive that we have to make a difference in our communities, it starts with addressing those systemic barriers that put families in a one-down position and saying, this isn't okay. And every family to thrive has to have these barriers stripped away, and we have to call attention to them. And we have to be part of the solution. And so this work is very important to me, and advancing equity and inclusion is all about the reason that we entered this field of family well-being to begin with.
So, Dr. Bass, I was listening to the radio about a month or 2 months ago, and then I was listening to Pandora, and to my surprise, there was a commercial from KVC, and it was specifically asking and appealing to African-American families to consider being foster parents. So I'm really interested in that, and why there was it seems like very intentional push to reach out to the African-American community for that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. We are really excited about the Generations campaign. That the first ad started running in August, but it's actually more than a year in the making of that partnership, doing market research to find out what that campaign should look like, and then getting ready to launch it. We know that there are not enough foster families in Kansas that are African-American foster families, and that we have an overrepresentation of Black and Brown children in the system. And that is a problem, and that needs to be addressed. But what we have before us also is that we don't have enough families that represent the clients that we're serving, and that can, be a family right from day one that understands some of the cultural differences that that child might be experiencing in school or in the community, or be able to carry on traditions that that child is familiar with in the home that they're having to leave temporarily. And so we partnered with 2 outside organizations to help put together that campaign. And even though we're really new, we're not even 4 months into it, we've already had close to 300 inquiries from Black families in Kansas. And we have about 24 that are in a class right now, and about a dozen who've already completed a class, who are finishing up the licensure process, getting ready to take a child for placement. And so we are really excited, and we hope that this will provide many more homes that are available to children who are already in the foster care system, while we continue to work on other pieces to prevent the disproportionality of children entering care to begin with. And the other great thing is, ideally, if a family has to experience foster care, that we can create a relationship between the foster family and the birth family or the family of removal, so that that supportive relationship can exist long after foster care exists in their life. And so I think this also sets families up from the very beginning to potentially have that connection and that partnership. And that would be the ideal, that families would leave the system with one more set of safe, loving, caring adults and extended family in their corner, so that they can turn to that support system and don't ever have to experience foster care again.
It's interesting. I love the campaign. I love the thought process behind it. It's very intentional, and it's true that connections come in many different ways and in many different forms. And you talked about culture and traditions, and those are connection points for many folks. And so ensuring that children have those connections, and then the birth parents, that they have those connections, is a really powerful way to, like you said, ensure that this child potentially has even more caring and loving adults in their life. So kudos to KVC for doing that. And it's been successful. I'm assuming that you've never seen the influx that you've seen regarding this. Okay. So what lessons do you believe that you've learned, or your organization has learned, while implementing these different policies and programs and processes regarding racial equity?
We are learning a lot along the way. And I think if you come back 6 months or 12 months, I'll have a lot more to add to the list as we continue to learn. One of them is communication. The importance of really inclusive, continuous communication is key. I think sometimes we can be doing really great things, but only some people know about them, or only some people's voices are included in the really great things we're doing, and then we fall short. And so making sure that we are really paying attention to everyone being included, everyone having a way to participate in the way that works for them, and that whatever changes or progress we're making, or even setbacks that we're coming into, that is clearly communicated out to everyone involved, so that they're part of the process. You can't have a end goal in mind and only have 10% of your team knowing what's going on. And so having it be inclusive through communication has shown to be really important. Another piece is data. We have a lot of data in child welfare, and we're missing some really key pieces of data. Our current database isn't as inclusive as we want it to be around gender and other identifiers. And so if we're not collecting the data that we're going to need, that's step one. But then also looking at the data that we do have, we have years and years of data. So what can that tell us about what we're getting right and what we're getting wrong? And then in addition to communication and data, I learned in my education as a therapist to focus on the process, and that the process is just as important as the goal you're working towards. And that has really rung true in our DEI work as well. As I think we're all in this together, and we all want to get to that finish line where we feel really proud of the culture that we're creating inside the workforce and the services that we're providing to the families. But sometimes in that rush to the finish line, we lose things that we're learning about the process. And to me, the interactions that we're having from one another, the conversations, the dialogue, the repair that we make when we make an injury, we get something wrong, that is an example of what we want to have happen in every interaction. And so I think there's so much power and so much healing that comes from the process along the way, that I am continually reminding myself and my team, let's really immerse ourselves in the process and learn along the way, so that in the end, our relationships are solid, our understanding of what each person needs to be included is solid, and then we can create a process that works and includes everyone. And then that becomes the finish line, right? It's always changing. The needs are always going to change. But if the process is solid and everyone feels good and safe in the process, then that's what we want to stick with in the long run.
Well, and I, just to say, absolutely, because we're never finished, right? We're never finished learning and evolving as people. And so to think that, okay, well, I've hit this marker, right? I have 50 families of color who have now been enrolled, and then that's it. And then, it feels like, man, but what else, right? What are some next steps that we can do to just build upon this? And the process, right? And falling in love with the process that comes with it. So I really appreciate you saying that. I cut you off. Please finish.
Well, I just wanted to add one thing actually to what you just said, because that reminded me about the process. So, we were so excited that families started to express interest and come forward as part of our Generations campaign. And then we had to pause and think, do we have the right supports and staff for in place for the families that are coming forward? For example, looking at our staff, we know we lack diversity in the number of Black staff that we have. So do we have the right staff to support these families through the licensure process, to be able to help them with anything they identify as a need? And then mentoring families. We want all new foster families or new relative caregivers to have a family that can help mentor them. Like, have we paused long enough to think, okay, so we have interest, but we don't, the last thing we want to do is invite a family in to become a foster parent and then lose them along the way because we don't have those right supports in place. So then it has caused us to take a step back and think, okay, what do we need to do within our infrastructure to be able to meet the unique needs of all new families coming forward? And so that is part of that continual learning process of, even sometimes the best of plans, you learn things along the way, and you get feedback from our current prospective foster parents about, how was this experience? Like, how was your MAP training or your DT training? What was missing in that we could change for next time or for the next families that are coming forward? And that's, I think, where the really rich learning happens, is through continually gathering information.
Yeah, I love that. And just being willing and open to, sometimes we can get so enamored with an idea that we don't want to add to it. We don't want to pivot from it. We don't want to make the necessary alterations. And the fact that that there's an understanding that this is a process, this will evolve, I think is beautiful, which leads me to my next and last question. What are the next steps for KVC regarding racial equity and child welfare?
Well, communication is going to come to mind again, because that can never go away. I've certainly learned the importance of not just saying we're going to communicate, but actually having a structured plan, and then being able to add to that as we learn that something's missing or something's not working. In a world with too much information, we're always learning. Like, do we need to send things by text message or email, or have it on a portal that people can access on their own time? But how do we get the message out and make sure it's digestible to everybody based on their job description or what their daily schedule looks like? Accountability is also really key. Accountability at all levels, that when we're structuring new initiatives or ongoing initiatives, we are continually coming back to see how are we doing on this, and ultimately who's making sure that we're making the right kind of progress, and that it's meaningful progress. When we started our DEI council, one of the first thoughts I had is, I don't want this to be a sterile, dry council where we're just checking off boxes and patting ourselves in the back and saying we have a DEI council. I want it to be rich. I want it to be full of passion. I want it to make changes. And we do. We have a really, really passionate group, and it's hard. It's really hard because we're bringing to the surface a lot of things that have been left unsaid and unidentified and unaddressed for a long time. But I would much rather live in that world and feel like we are getting things done and we're having important conversations and that we have shared accountability than having something that's on paper but isn't actually changing anyone's experience when they come into work every day or when they come to our office to receive services. And then I think another piece I would just mention is that continual feedback from clients, from our community partners, from our staff about what's working and not working, and then really celebrating those successes. We're really focused in on providing a good experience in which families and staff both feel like they're receiving fair, positive experiences, which comes back to simple but important things like kindness and taking time to understand the other person's lived experience. But when we're getting that right, if we can really take the time to celebrate that, understand what's working and build upon that, I think that's going to be a key to continued success. And then I think continual messaging. There's so much of our work that is impacted by policy and lawmakers, and oftentimes individuals who work outside of the field of child welfare. And so I don't think we can do too much in the area of sitting down and helping to educate, using families' lived experience to share about what went wrong with their experience in the child welfare system and how we can get it better next time. I think that will help improve the service array that's available to families so that foster care becomes a really small amount of the work that we're doing. And most of the work that we're doing is much further upstream, and it's delivered to families in a way that they're receptive and they're inviting that into their life rather than feeling like someone is forcing themselves into their life and it's not in a helpful way.
Well, we thank you so very much. I think it's important for people to kind of get an idea of what it looks like to put these things into practice. And we know from the previous lectures that we are putting on that we're kind of reaching a lot of different people in a wide span of professionals. And so in different fields, is there anything else that you feel like might be helpful for them to hear, either if it's overcoming hurdles or things to know when getting started? What kind of things can you expect when you start to put these things into place? Any other thoughts that you have before leaving us?
I would just say that I think regardless of what field somebody is coming from or what background, just taking the time to really invite everyone into the conversation and make it clear that there is a shared goal and there is shared accountability, and then taking the time to have those conversations and develop groups that are as inclusive as possible. And then not being afraid to just admit when we're getting it wrong or when we need to change course. And when we've learned something along the way that causes us to pause and go in a different direction, as long as it's under that shared vision of making things better for people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Voss. Just as a reminder, this is a courageous conversation that has been hosted by the Kansas Racial Equity Collaborative, which is a collaborative effort from the University of Kansas School of Social Welfare, Care Portal, and the Department for Children and Families. And Dr. Bosch, you have been our first guest, so we're so excited that you honored us with talking today. And that is all that we have. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.